Good morning, everyone. As Randy was saying, I'm Chris Fallaw, and I'm part of the management team here at the fire department. We here at the fire department wear many hats, one of which is the fire marshal for me. I assist Chief Poindexter with managing the fire department and the daily operations. Also, I'm in charge of the inspection program, plan review, construction inspections, etc. So, give you a little history. When my education's in engineering, but I had a early on change of heart in life and decided to be a fireman, which I was a firefighter early on in life as a volunteer, and then decided to make a career out of it. So never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would be a fire marshal at this point in my life, but here I am trying to do the best I can. Couple of things I want to talk to you about this morning is sort of what we do and why we do the things we do. Fire code is very complex, but it's very important. The main thing with fire code is understanding that it's a minimum. Code is a minimum, and when businesses and occupancies are required to comply with code, you got to keep in mind it's a minimum, and anything above that is just gravy. And we love to see a lot of gravy because it means it's safer. And I say that lightly because code is minimum, but you would be surprised at the resistance we get from trying to enforce the minimums. So I guess what I want to talk to you about, and you can type your questions in, and Randy, I'm going to pause for a minute and make sure that the volume and the clarity is good before I proceed on. Make sure everybody can hear you.
We hear you. I hear you on my end, and everybody seems to be signaling they can hear you and see you as well. You know, Chris got all cleaned up for us this morning.
How's my makeup and my hair? I mean, I got it all worked out.
Your hair is really outstanding this morning. So.
Hey, Rocky, we got something in common here, buddy. Okay, so what I want to do is I presented to Rotary not too long ago, and I had a little outline that I feel like caters to a lot of the audience that we have with the chamber. And one thing I want to tell you to keep in mind is we're not like the ones that go out there and point to our badge and say we're in charge and we're going to tell you what to do, and we're here to tell you how to run your business. The ultimate goal is to keep you safe and the patrons that visit your business, or the employees that work in your business or work with you safe. That is the ultimate goal in life safety and property safety. So when we enforce code or tell you about code, it's for safety and property conservation, and not just what we want. And so it's very important to understand that we're there to keep you safe and to keep anybody that graces the doors of your buildings safe. Also, it's very important to remember downtown, those buildings share common walls. So your wall may be someone else's wall, and you wouldn't want somebody doing substandard work beside you and unbeknownst to you have a fire and not perform the proper procedure and code and have an accident and cause you to lose your business and your livelihood. So that's just some of the things that we think about that the average person doesn't think about. So what we normally do at our department, you know, if you're gonna remodel, when I say remodel, it can be a broad spectrum, such as anywhere from painting, new curtains, new carpet, new tile floor, wall coverings, etc., light fixtures, tables and chairs. That's what we call a facelift. Now, remodeling where we would get involved as far as the code enforcement side is if you change the path of egress, if you build a wall, remove a wall, change the type of occupancy. Say you go from a business to a manufacturing, or from a storage to a manufacturing, or you go from a mercantile where you sell merchandise to a restaurant or an assembly. There's a lot of code things that you have to comply with in order to make these changes. Some are more stringent and some you go to a less stringent. So the pendulum swings both ways. And I'm just going to go through a short and sweet timeline that are, I guess, a checklist, as you will, that you have to follow in order to be on board with current code and requirements in Surrey County and Mount Airy. So the first thing I want to tell you is, if you're not familiar with code and compliance in the area that you're working in, hire you a competent and trusted contractor. And cheap is not always better. If you have to have plans drawn, if you have to have engineered plans or design professional, choose one that is well recommended and that is has a good name in the community. And I say that lightly because, like anything else, you have good ones and bad ones. I tell people a lot of times, you don't want a heart surgeon putting a transmission in your car, just like you don't want the mechanic doing heart surgery on you. So choose the right person for the job. And that's about as plain as I can put it, because we have people saying, oh, well, I used to help somebody with construction work back in the 70s. I used to help a buddy of mine build houses. I can do this. And then they get in way over the head, and then it's a mess, and it winds up costing you in the long run. So the first thing you got to do is decide on the type of project you have. You have to decide whether it's a demo or a remodel or new construction. And that runs the gamut. It can be from a simple demo of taking off a deck off the back of a building or a porch area to tearing down an entire building, such as we had with the Spencer's project, where they demoed an entire building. And believe it or not, a demo process requires a permit. And the reason it requires a permit is because when you start taking away a building from another building, or if you demo, you can cause structural degradation in the building that's beside it. So we have to make sure we have a permit, and we have to perform inspections and make sure that building that's left standing, or the building surrounding what you're tearing down, stays structurally sound and safe. A lot of them share sprinkler systems, fire alarms, etc. So we have to make sure all that is separated as well. A remodel, and that's what we deal with a lot here in the city, which I'm glad. We have revitalization and rehab of a lot of our existing buildings. And it does my heart good to see some of these older buildings get refurbed and reused, because that tells me that we're using our resources. We're not just tearing down a nice, good, structurally sound building to make way for a new building. So many times I've seen good quality buildings be torn down just to build something else. And sometimes that's disappointing. So remodels are very common in our office. Sometimes they can be the most complicated. The rehab, the most recent that comes to mind is the 65 unit apartment complex for the Spencer's Mill. That was a very complex project. Numerous hours were spent there, but it turned into a beautiful place, and it turned out into a nice project. It turned out really well. I was really proud of how that turned out. And then you have the new construction. That starts from going to planning and saying, hey, I want to build a new building here for a business. I'm going to build a dentist office. Can I put it here? And what you do is you go to planning and say, hey, does this fit the neighborhood? Is this allowed? And the reason we have planning requirements and rules is to protect you as a landowner or a property owner in your area. You may not want a church right beside an ABC store, or you may not want a pig farm beside your elementary school, or you may not want a loud scrapyard beside a residential neighborhood. So that's the reason we go through planning, to make sure it fits in that area. And we do a thing called TRC, which is a technical review committee. And that's where we hash all these things out. We say, hey, is this a fit? Does it fit our parameters that has been adopted by city code and by our local ordinances and state and federal ordinances. So once you determine that, you say, okay, I've got to get plans. So that requires an architect or an engineer to professionally design plans, and code says it has to be a design professional. So whichever arena it's in, like I said earlier about the mechanic and the doctor, you know, whichever arena it's in, that's the one you need to choose. You get plans drawn up, you submit the plans for review. It goes through the review process. Sometimes there's some minor tweaking, and if you use a real good or reputable design professional, very few changes happen. It may be something with, hey, you decided to put a 36-inch sidewalk, we require a 42-inch, and that's just an example. That may not be code. Or you decide to put a red maple tree there, and we decide we require a spruce. So it may be something as simple as that. And then we issue a permit for construction. You start doing the work, you call for your inspections along the way. We come out and do the inspections, and at the completion of the project, once everything is complete and in compliance with code, we send approval for a certificate of occupancy, and then you're ready to start your business. So that's basically how a construction project runs. However, there's a whole lot of intricacies in between there, and there's a lot of people involved in that. I am the city fire marshal, but I work as a team. We have myself and 3 shift supervisors who are level 3 fire inspectors who also help me with the plan review process, and also Chief Poindexter fills in for inspections and things when I'm absent. So we work as a team, and we do things together, and I get their input because there may be something I miss, especially on the larger projects. It's hard for one person to catch everything. So it's complex in certain areas, and then some things are as simple as someone wanting to put a picnic shelter up. That still has to go through plan review to make sure that we're not too close to a property line, or impeding like overhead power lines, or it's several issues involved there. Now, some of the major things that we deal with in our department are sprinklers and fire alarms, and that is solely out of our department. And sprinklers have to be sprinkler work has to be performed by a design professional, such as a NICET certified person. You just can't have a plumber come in and do sprinkler repair work, which I have had people say, well, I've got a plumber that's going to come work on my sprinkler system. And I just sort of chuckle inside, and I say, no, you can't do that. You have to have somebody that's familiar with sprinkler systems, because, you know, it's not just like the regular hot's on the left and cold's on the right. You know, we've got just a little more in depth than just changing the fitting out. There's pressures involved, and there's switches and things like that. And a lot of people don't realize that fire alarms have to be stamped by an architect or an engineer, and that's expensive. So when you require somebody to have a fire alarm and the code requires it, they get that shock and awe when they have to get a architect or an engineer to put a stamp on there, because those little rubber stamps are expensive. I haven't seen one much under $1,000 here lately. So let's see if there's anything. I know I've covered a lot and real quick, and I talk fast, but one of the major things we do is initially we have TRC meetings. I mentioned those, and that's a group meeting with city officials and some county officials. It involves our department, planning, the police department, city hall employees, utilities, engineering. We all get together and look at plans for a project, and sometimes we get in there and we say, hey, this is going to work, or we don't have the infrastructure to handle this. And we look at things like water supply. If it's a large facility that's going to require a heavy duty sprinkler system, we got to make sure we've got the water in the ground to cover that sprinkler system. We got to make sure that if it's a large building that has, you know, a large roof, that we've got enough drainage. We've got the sewer and septic to handle that facility. So there's a lot involved in doing construction, other than just saying, I'm going to plant a building here. And it's hard for people to understand that sometimes.